I am pretty happy today. I get to cover my man Terron and give him some of the just deserves that he does deserve. But within that process, I am pretty happy and actually proud with the graphic I created of a cross-section of statistics to create an analytics to not only support the crucial and incredible value of my man Terron, but to show some other things that really kind of surfaced when you look across a series of these statistics. And it's not going to be highbrow. It's going to be very obvious. And that makes me happy in two ways. I grew up with the German, the Germanic, and the Japanese culture, East and West, kind of forming my early thoughts and the way I view the world. And I learned from the Eastern side that the most simple is actually the most complex. And then from the German side, well, they believe the most complex is the most complex, and you should always keep getting more complex. And with both these avenues, I think there is good stuff to be had. But I do believe when you're trying to talk to somebody and have a dialogue, the most dialed in and simple that yet reveals complexity is the most crucial. It's the most crucial avenue to take. And I believe I got that on this one. So I'm going to cover the blitzes and non-blitzed snaps from the quarterbacks to Skylar and Teddy. And then I'm going to do the next section will be the opposing rank of the pressure percentage of that defense. And then I'm going to have Terron's pressures allowed. And then the team's total pressures for the game. And then the O-line, or whoever was on that O-line that gave up the sacks and the most amount of pressures. And when I highlight the anomalies, something is going to stand out so starkly. So before I get into that, though, you can skip by this if you're not your thing. I'm not doing the live on Wednesday, this week or next. It's not because I'm quitting. I do feel like I've got the tech side down. I want to dial in on how I present it, but I'm going away on a business trip, and I have this big film that I'm working on for Jalen Phillips, and I'm really honored to do it, and I want it to be as good as I can get it. So I want to focus on that before I head on my business trip. So there won't be any live this week or next week, but in 3 weeks, I'll be back to start again, and I will be even better. I'm going to be focusing on getting better at that. So with all that said, I want to say thank you for stopping by. I want to give you a shout-out and a shout-out to Ace per Head, because without the two of you, this show ain't going down. Ace per Head's betting software is the premier white label platform for bookies to manage their players and grow their sportsbook operation. Click the link in the description below to get set up in minutes. Ask for the Curtis promo and get a special introductory discount. All right, so I want to get something out of the way about my man Terron before I get into this little graphic, and that's his injury history. Clearly, he has an injury history. It does diminish some of his awesomeness. You can't deny it. But, guys, understand, great offensive linemen have been playing with injuries forever. There's some that are in the Hall of Fame that every year were injured, and they just played through it. Mark Shrelith, we all know him. That guy had knee injuries every year, always having surgeries, always playing diminished. But he was a star and a stud, and he is one of many. Now, Terron is able to play through these injuries. Now, some of them come and they knock him out for a period of time, and that's not good. But when you look at through what this guy played through with injuries and what he was able to produce, it's just part of the thing. If he misses a couple of games, what he brings to this team, it is totally worth it. So I expect Terron to be injured, but it's not the injuries I care about. Does the injury diminish him to where he can't play, or does it actually take him out of the games? This guy's an animal, and so that's a good news in the sense that you've got a guy who is a ultra tough guy who, yeah, he does get his nicks, but he will play through them. So I just want to get that out of the way, and then we'll use that also as a context overriding these statistics. So here's my graphic. You don't have to look at my mug. We'll look at this graphic for quite some time. All right. So like I said, I'm going to do the German take on this thing and dig into all this stuff to show a lot of nuance. But the key thing I want to focus on is the value that Terron brings. Now, just a quick overlay of all these stats. So if you look at it on your own, you want to parse through it. Top Dolphins were the 32nd least blitz team in the NFL. They were the 6th highest pressured offense, despite only being blitzed 32nd least. They were also the 8th highest number of pressures surrendered. So they were failing in their protections. But when, why, and how? I'd like to ultimately use my statistics that I created, number of blockers per play and receivers en route, to really wrap all this stuff together. But it will take a little time, and I'd have to do more concise graphics to keep everybody in play because it can get kind of numbery. So let's just focus on the top column here. It's blitz. That's the number of plays blitzed. And then 4-man is non-blitzed plays. So you can see the ratio there between blitz and man. Then opponents' pressure rank, how well they pressured that defense, the opposing defense. Terron's pressures, team's total pressures, and then O-line with most pressures and who gave up the sacks. So I would just really want to focus on Terron's pressures and total team pressures for now. A quick look at blitz and 4-man. You see right out of the gate, the orange box is heavy blitz. And then the green blocks, the squares, is light blitz. So you see we came out 2 weeks of blitzing. Defensive coordinators decided to go for a long run of zone coverage with very little blitzing, and a quick game with Detroit of heavy blitzing, back to a long run of zone coverage. Los Angeles Chargers and Buffalo decide to blitz, and then another run of zone coverage, ending up with Buffalo blitzing. But overall, like I said, 32nd least blitzed. Now, Terron's pressures, week 1, he was knocked out for 2 plays. That's when the toe got injured. But then he came back. And you could see on the right side, under team total pressures, there's the purple boxes, which means high levels of pressure. And under Terron's pressures, there's a green box, which was his worst game, then black boxes, which means he was either out of the game or he missed substantial time. So Terron's pressures open up. He allowed 1. He was mostly healthy. The team did give up 11 pressures, but this was the 7th ranked in New England, 7th ranked pressure defense in the league. Ultimately, that's where they turned out to be by the end of the season. And they blitzed near 50% of the time. So it's kind of expected. Also, you could see Little gave up 3 pressures, and Little, it was a problem all season. But that's a discussion for later on. So, but then week 2 against Baltimore, week 3 against Buffalo, average or pass rushing team to not such a good pass rushing team, but the pressures dropped to 9 and 5. Then we come against Cincinnati in week 4. Terron does have his worst game. The toe was starting to hurt him as the following games, he was eventually came out after only a couple of plays. But we gave up 13 pressures, but again, 5 of those pressures came from Little. So it's really, if Little wasn't in there, you probably might have had 4 less. So you probably would have ended up about 9 pressures or 8 pressures. So then we go into week 5. And week 5, Terron only sees a short period of play. Jets don't blitz. They're an excellent pass rushing defense. But the number of pressures skyrockets to 25. 7 pressures by Shell. He had a bad day on the left side, as we all remember. But then the next week as well against Minnesota, who's not a good pressure team that doesn't blitz, Terron doesn't play at all, and we give up 22 pressures. 11 pressures by Little and 3 sacks. So that's a lot there anyway. Even if you took Little out, you figure whoever would have been in his place maybe gave 1 or 2. So you took about between 11 and 13, which still would have been high. So then Terron comes back after the rest, gives up 0 pressures, 4 pressures total for the team against the Pittsburgh. Detroit, good pressure team, good pass rushing team. They actually blitz substantially, and we only give up 4 pressures on a day, 2 by Terron, but he's on an island. You have to understand that. But that was his worst game overall when you rated amongst other plays. He led the team in pressures, but there's only 4 total. And then another 8 pressures total against Chicago, nothing there, but they're not a good pressure team. Then 5 pressures total against Cleveland. They're not a good pressure team. But a lot of that had to do with Terron going one-on-one with, what's-his-face, against Garrett. I had to type that in there for a second. Going against Garrett. And he handled him pretty much one-on-one all day, iced him out, and then that allowed the rest of the Dolphins' offensive line to handle the rest of the guys. So then that ended that run. Then it was the bye week. And then if you remember the Houston game, it's a very clear indication. First, almost 2 quarters, we were blowing them out. There was a joke. There was no pressure. Then Terron went down, the toe. He had the hamstring, the groin somewhere along the way, but I think it was a toe for that. And then all of a sudden, 2 was on the run. Pressure. And it ended up being 17 pressures on a day with no blitzing against the 20th ranked pressure defense, which is terrible. Now, Jackson gave up 6 pressures. That was a lot there. Then I believe he went down. So Terron again leaves. Pressures skyrocket. Then he goes against San Fran the next week. Now, they're a good pressure defense, but they only blitzed 4 times and got 3 sacks out of those 4 blitzes. 11 pressures on the day, and, you figure, well, it should be up to the 20-something. But this defense just played zone all day. And Shell gave up 3 sacks, but the pressures were high. 11 pressures is not a good day. 11 pressures made Brady freak out last year, if you do recall. So then Terron comes back against the Chargers. They're not a good pressure team, but they bring lots of blitzes. Terron gives up 1 pressure, which ended up being a sack, but it was only 6 pressures on the day. Then the following week against Buffalo, they blitz 50% of the time. Terron gives up 0 pressures. Team gives up 6 pressures total. Then we come back against Green Bay. They only blitz twice. They're a good pressure team with 8. But Terron gets injured in that game. He allows 1 pressure, 8 pressures on a day. But he was starting to feel it because the next week he was out against New England. New England, as we said, was a 7th total pressure defense. They only blitzed 6 times this time. When they first went against the Dolphins, it was 15 blitzes to 18 4-man rush. Now they went 6 blitzes to 34 4-man rush. Without Terron, they went from 11 pressures to 20 pressures. Eichenberg ended up with 7 pressures. Then Terron was out again the next week against New York. Again, they don't blitz. Good pressure team, but still 15 pressures. Then the following week, Terron comes back with 1 arm, and he's got the groin, and he's got the toe, and they blitz 12 out of 33, and we're back at 15 pressures. And so I could dig into a lot of the stuff here. You can go look over and see what information you can pull out of it. I'm going to go when I have more time to dig into the numbers and go week by week and show you all the stuff that I saw, plus a lot of other things. But you could see clearly Terron comes in, even with 1 arm, and the pressures reduce. When he is out, the pressures skyrocket. Partly because we have some very poor pieces that we decided to go into the season with, but also because Terron blocks on his own. He's left there on an island, and then all the protection. Now, the one stat I didn't put in here is the stat that I created, which is blockers per play and receivers in route. And I'm going to do those numbers for the whole season and then tie it into this. And that's going to be even more shocking. But clearly, Terron's ability to handle the best guy they're going to put over there and then let all the help go down is a vast bonus. But what's also clear is we have some key pieces last year, whether it's Cotton, it's Eichenberg, it's Jackson, it's Shell, that just weren't even subpar. It was terrible. And this was without heavy blitzing. So we got to take all these numbers, and I'm going to do a second podcast to kind of pull it all together because I think I've gone on long enough and I've given you enough information. But Terron and Tua. Terron is such a key, guys. This next season, we're going to see there's going to be some really good. I think there's a better collection maybe of pass rushers in combination with good offenses because it's not just a pass rush. It's what's that pass rush and what's that offense that creates the synergy between the two teams. And so I'm going to cover that as well in a follow-up podcast because it's a lot of information. But guys, my man Terron is so epic for us. It's incalculable what this guy does. He is a stud of stud. And we just need him to have the kind of nicks that he can handle and play through. And if that's the case, we have real opportunity. Terron, to me, is the number one key for this team going this season because you got a quarterback that has concussion issues, that has a little bit of injury issues, and you need to keep him protected. So I hope you enjoyed. I hope I didn't dig in too deep and get too numbery. But I'll dial it in a little bit tighter on some of these aspects. But you're going to see some very, very clear stuff that are built out of this. And with these other stats, that's going to tell you a ton about 2023 based on what we see in preseason. What we see in these preseason games about these other pieces raising their level. Because Grier, over the last 3 seasons, has decided to make clear choices on the offensive line. And this could be amazing and make him look like a genius if it works out. But if not, you've got to say, what was the process? Why would you make these decisions? And so this is the yin and yang of the 2023 season. And I do believe there's a lot of yang when it comes to my man Terron, so let's hope he stays in there. Anyway, Curtis saying thanks for stopping by. I appreciate all you guys do. I'm always working on getting better, and I promise this season coming up will be my best season ever. Anyway, Curtis saying catch you next time. Be well. My man Terron, I love you. Go Fins. Start building your own online sportsbook today by getting signed up with AceBread.com service that'll allow you to book action on sports from all around the world.